Hi, I'm Dan Abrams, and this is Court Case.
Ready to take your place?
Yeah! Kill all you I hope you die in person as well.
First up, we're in Volusia County, Florida, for the arraignment of 33-year-old Xavier Cummings. He's been charged with escape, and attempting to elude, armed burglary of a dwelling, 2 counts of possession of a weapon by a convicted felon, 2 counts of grand theft of firearms, and 2 counts of grand theft of a motor vehicle. So how do you rack up that laundry list of crimes? Well, just watch and see.
He's on the move, going north on 95.
This cruiser is not driven by an officer in pursuit. It's actually Xavier Cummings behind the wheel of a stolen police unit.
Guys, give me your speed. We're about 105, 110, trying to catch up.
Cummings stole the cruiser after police confronted him while responding to a disturbance call at a nearby motel, and he hasn't looked back. Officers try a pit maneuver by bumping his rear end, but Cummings is able to steer out of it.
Every unit behind us, stop traffic. We got plenty of air.
Seconds later, another bump at over 100 miles an hour sends him spinning off the highway.
10-3, someone just hit him into the woods.
Car in the woods, can't see the driver.
Everyone does not have eyes on the suspect.
More officers arrive on the scene, including a canine unit, as the team prepares to approach the vehicle.
Hey, heads up, he's trying to drive the car out of the woods.
Outnumbered and outgunned, it appears Cummings will have no choice but to surrender. But apparently, no one told him that. Cummings can be seen here making a break for it. Right to the driver's seat of another police unit.
Hey, get around the car! Are you kidding me?
Nope, not kidding. And just like that, he's on the road again.
Follow that car, got another car.
Up the interstate, more officers are staged and prepare to deploy a spike strip.
The only vehicle coming out to center lane, blue lights on. Only vehicle, about 3 seconds out.
Officer's toss is perfectly timed, and after running over the spike strip, Cummings' car begins slowing down.
Okay, vehicle is smoking, going into the inside lane.
Alright, he's breaking for the median, guys. He's breaking for the median.
But now as officers prepare to engage Cummings for a second time, they have a new concern.
I need to know if there's any guns in that car that he just stole in the front. He says, yes, there probably is.
The situation continues to escalate.
Car 1, make sure we get some long guns up here, too.
As 3 officers approach the SUV, they find Cummings face down outside the vehicle. In a 60-mile cross-county high-speed chase, Xavier Cummings was hit with a litany of charges, including escape, 2 counts of grand theft of a motor vehicle.
On those charges, I find probable cause on all counts.
But Cummings has just one question.
What's one minute?
No bond on
No one, I'll say.
But before the judge can answer, Cummings gets the last word.
I got it. I need the same word. Executive order comes to Kathy, Moon 9, help!
Xavier Cummings is currently being held without bond while he awaits trial. Next, we head to Burlington, Vermont for the trial of James Burke. The 51-year-old was charged with sexual assault for allegedly drugging and raping a 21-year-old homeless woman in his mobile home. The incident occurred 6 years earlier, but Burke's accused by the state of deliberately stalling the legal process by, among other things, filing more than 150 pretrial motions. Once the trial begins, Burke, who's representing himself, continues to disrupt the proceedings with loud outbursts and wild accusations.
The corrupt attorney in the country.
On the stand, Burke continues to attempt his bullying tactics by attacking the victim's testimony.
That was a complete fabrication to back up this bogus date rape drug allegation, which is, off the wall.
Burke then doubles down on his defense that the sex with the 21-year-old was consensual.
Rubbing her shoulder and giving her back rub and stuff, and this is just to break the ice with her to see if she would resist me, because if she was going to, I was going to stop and not mess with her, see if she would resist me.
And finally, Burke mentions how he'll go about collecting evidence should he ever find himself in the same position in the future.
I'm gonna get myself a video camera, and from now on, I got, like I said, an address book full of girlfriends, and they're gonna be secretly videotaped from now on, and just to cover my ass.
Now, with the jury done deliberating, Burke enters the courtroom, toting a box of legal documents emblazoned with the message, 100% innocent. And as the judge calls for the jury's verdict,
does the jury find Mr. Burke guilty or not guilty?
He takes a moment to straighten his signage and then seemingly appears to smirk with confidence as the big moment finally arrives.
Does the jury find Mr. Burke guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Burke seems a bit confused by the verdict at first, and then refuses to accept it.
There will be an appeal in this case. That's an incorrect verdict. I have evidence to prove my son innocent right here in this box. We're appealing this case to the Vermont Supreme Court.
How did they do that?
You set me up for conviction.
5 months later, Burke is back in front of Judge Matthew Katz, this time to learn his sentence.
The sentence is 18 to 20 years to serve.
This is a travesty of justice.
Burke's outburst in the background gets him removed from the courtroom, but not before he gets in a few choice words for Judge Katz.
A miscarriage of justice. You're a piece of I'm gonna write down Raymond Emerson, you
James Burke would later appeal his conviction, but it was denied by the Vermont Supreme Court. Burke's earliest chance for release is 2031, when he would be 71 years old. On a previous episode of Court Camp, we featured this story showing an unruly defendant being taken down and tased by 2 Sedgwick County, Kansas deputies. One of those officers was Brett Seacat. At the time, he was praised for his quick action subduing the defendant. But 7 years later, he's back in the courtroom wearing a different kind of uniform. Seacat was found guilty of first-degree murder and aggravated arson for shooting and killing his 34-year-old wife, Vashti Seacat, then setting their house on fire as part of a cover-up scheme. The prosecution claimed the murder plot was put in motion just days after Vashti Seacat filed for divorce. Brett Seacat maintained his innocence, claiming his wife had actually set fire to their home before taking her own life. The jury, however, did not buy it.
Count 1, murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Brett T. Seacat guilty of murder in the first degree.
Now it's sentencing.
Mr. Seacat, if you would stand, please, sir.
When given a chance to speak, 37-year-old Seacat begins a nearly 20-minute dissertation systematically attacking members of the victim's family, beginning with her father.
Went for it, she took the podium and addressed the entire courtroom as Vashti's father, but you have never been Vashti's father. Ever. I spent 19 years trying to protect Vashti from the damage that family had done, and in the end I failed.
Next, he singles out his brother on the gallery.
He talks about his beloved sister, but he never treated her like a beloved sister. See, Vashti told me what he did to her.
It's inappropriate. This is supposed to be his time to speak about his actions, and I think this is improper.
Judge Larry Solomon agrees to put an end to Seacat's disparaging claims against the victim's family. But after redirecting him, he becomes the new target.
I understand, even though I'm the one being sentenced, this day does not belong to me. This day was meant for people who made sure it would happen. This day belongs to you, Judge Solomon. This is your day. This is the day you get to take your place in front of the cameras and pass sentence on a man you have worked so hard to convict. Go ahead and pass the sentence that you hope will get the biggest headline. Go ahead and pass sentence you think will land you a spot on the Kansas Supreme Court. Go ahead and pass the sentence that guarantees your spot in heaven. Because the sentence you believe will profit you most in this life is going to damn you in the next.
Seacat may have gotten in some verbal shots, but it's Judge Solomon who gets the final say.
Your guilt in this case was overwhelming. Evidence to support your defense of suicide was totally unbelievable and virtually unsupported by any credible evidence. Your statement this morning confirms to me that you live in some sort of bizarre alternate reality. it bears zero reality to the case that was tried and the evidence that was presented in this matter. And we do know that you thought you were smarter than law enforcement, you thought you were smarter than fire officials, and you thought you were smarter than 12 jurors who heard this case. And in the end, of course, we know that you were smarter than any of them. One of the victim's family asked me to show you no mercy, and I don't intend to show you any mercy. You didn't show Vashti any mercy.
And with that, Judge Solomon hands down the maximum allowable sentence on all charges, totaling 31 years to life in prison.
You mentioned the spotlight had been on this case for quite some time. The spotlight wasn't on me, Mr. Seacat, it was on you. And now, thankfully, it goes out.
Stand your ground. Stand your ground.
Next, we go to Cleveland, Ohio for a bond hearing. The defendant is 32-year-old Antonio Swanson. He's been charged with 10 felonies, including murder, aggravated murder, and attempted murder. Swanson allegedly shot and killed his half-sister, Juanita Hill, over a dispute involving a car. The defendant also took aim at Hill's boyfriend, as well as his own father. Both men were uninjured. Swanson's a repeat offender with convictions dating back to 2006. As he lumbers forward, Swanson begins making seemingly nonsensical comments.
Good morning, Mr. Torres.
Duct tape. Stand your ground. No retreat.
Sir,
Make my bond and chill you.
I'm going to ask you to be quiet.
Then he begins making remarks about his bond.
I'm just making a request. You making $1 million, I'm paying that. I'm getting out.
Thank you. Mr. Torres.
Thank you, Your Honor. My understanding is that he is demanding, so the change will be November 7th.
November 7th?
As the prosecutor, Jose Torres, goes over the case, the defendant makes a series of hand gestures. Then he challenges the state to increase his bond amount.
The state will ask for a $5 million bond in this case.
Make that $5 million. $5 million.
Statements in the court
That's disrespectful.
in regards to the bond and the threats to the prosecutor.
I made promises.
Those promises were also made in previous cases. Now he's here because of this new case, where not only he killed his 26-year-old sister,
She stole my car.
the defendant shot her once, she went to the ground, and the defendant went to where she was, shot her twice as she lay on the ground, and that was done in front of her father.
Who gives a He ain't never bought me nothing. She stole my car. Told her to give it back. Oh, they shot at me.
Sir.
Stand your ground. No
The
retreat.
judge then decides to go beyond the state's requested bond.
Actually, sir, based on your request, this bond's going to be $15 million.
No, billion.
Yes, for surety.
Make you look good.
A few weeks later, Swanson is brought to a different court for his arraignment.
Mr. Swanson, have you received a copy of your indictment now?
Yes, sir.
Have you had a chance to look at it? No. The question was, did you have a chance to look at it? You want to enter a plea?
Not guilty by reason of insanity.
Okay. Well, we'll enter your plea of not guilty at this time. Not guilty by reason of insanity by court rule has to be in writing.
Because the case was moved to a different court, Swanson will receive a new bond amount.
The state of Ohio requests a bond of at least $2 million from this defendant based on the heinousness of the acts that he committed in this case against his sister and his father and other individuals.
I give you 3D. I don't care.
At the court's discretion. $2 million bond is cash surety your property. Serve your first pre-trial is a week from today on the 25th of November at 9 a.m., all right?
I'm going to trial. I'm never going to be trial.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Swanson's case was assigned to the mental health docket. He's currently in a county jail awaiting trial. Next, we're in Houston, Texas, and the trial of Susan Wright. The 27-year-old housewife and mother of two was charged with first-degree murder after she admitted to stabbing her husband more than 190 times. Wright's defense team argued the murder was an act of self-defense. The culmination of years of alleged physical and mental abuse she says she suffered at the hands of her husband.
He threw her down, grabbed her by the arms, and he began punching her, and he kicked her with his bare feet.
The prosecution, however, claimed the killing was motivated by money, specifically her husband's $200,000 life insurance policy.
This case is not about self-defense. This case is about selfishness.
During the trial, lurid details were revealed that on the night of the murder, Wright seduced her husband with the promise of sex and tied him to the bed using neckties and a bathrobe sash.
Jeffrey was nude. He had all of his clothes off. The evidence will show you that Susan Wright lit candles in the bedroom.
Those candles were then used to drip hot wax on Jeffrey Wright's genitals. And the prosecution argued the sadistic play soon turned deadly. Wright grabbed a hunting knife and began stabbing her husband in the neck and head with enough force to break off the tip of the blade. But even in a case full of graphic details, the prosecution dropped the ultimate bombshell with the introduction of state's evidence number 56. The actual blood-stained mattress from the Wrights' bedroom. Then, in front of an already stunned courtroom, prosecuting attorney Kelly Siegler has a colleague tied to the bed and then climbs on top of him to assume the position of Susan Wright.
And I attack at the head area first.
Just feet away from the live demonstration, Wright can be seen sobbing. And after an 8-day trial, jurors reached a verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Susan Lucille Wright, guilty of murder as charged in the indictment.
The victim's brother and sister-in-law would get custody of the couple's 2 children. And later at sentencing, the victim's father tearfully recounted the horror his son suffered the night of his murder.
It's unbelievable. I mean, how can a human being do what she did to my son? Stab him in the eyeballs when he's awake. I can't believe she did it. She's evil.
Susan Wright was sentenced to 25 years in prison for first-degree murder of her husband. Her sentence would later be reduced to 20 years. And in 2020, after serving just 16 of them, Wright was released on parole.